Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here with another top 10, my best of 2023 top 10 for movies. Now, admittedly, I don't do film like I do TV currently. I think that's pretty obvious. My channel right now is largely reviews of TV episodes with maybe 1 to 3 movies sprinkled in per year. But make no mistake, film is my true love. That's where my love of this medium was born. I've been obsessed with film since I was a very small child, and my library of films I've seen is vast. I majored in film in college, and even to this day, the lack of films I've seen isn't indicative of a wane in interest. It's mostly due to me being so in tune with what should or should not be good that I know what to see and what not to see. Although I do admit that with 4 kids, getting to the theater isn't easy. Were I still childless, I'd probably see 2 to 3 times the amount of movies that I saw this year. But having said that, though, I'm pretty satisfied with what I saw this year. Like, satisfied enough to do an inaugural top 10 for 2023 films. I want to start by laying out the handful of films I haven't seen that you'll probably hear about or have heard about when you read award nominees, winners, etc. Thankfully, the number is fairly small, and some of these I do expect to still see before the Oscars air. Also, I'm going to list the ones I haven't seen that I have interest in. I'm only going to list the ones I haven't seen that I have interest in. There may be a couple that'll pop up in awards nominees or winners that I didn't see and I have no interest in seeing, so I won't be mentioning those. Lastly, once I'm done with the top 10, there will probably be some movies that I didn't list as not having seen, but that also didn't make the top 10 that will have you wondering, how the fuck is that not in his top 10? Well, after I finish the top 10, I'll address the absence of some notable films from my list. And that's that. That's all the pregame show I got. So let's run off what I haven't seen and then get to the top 10. Of the Oscar nominees for Best Picture, I haven't seen Maestro, Anatomy of a Fall, and The Zone of Interest. I'll probably only watch Maestro if I hear really good things about it, and so far I haven't. Like, I saw that Bradley Cooper was nominated for Best Actor, but like, that feels like one of those movies where it kind of is just like, and if you've seen it and you love it, feel free to tell me that I'm completely wrong in the comments. But this feels like one of those movies that's just like a big circle jerk where like some artsy motherfucker in Hollywood makes some shit in black and white, and it's like it's totally meant for them to stroke each other off. Like, look how artsy this is. Oh, that's so artsy. Oh, here's some awards. And then like everyone else watches it and it was just like some boring fucking shit. And like, even if you, and again, as someone who, again, I majored in film in college. Like, I'm not just a casual moviegoer, but I still don't buy that shit either, where they make stuff that's like clearly going after awards, and the only people who are gonna like it are the people who give out awards, and cinephiles who want to feel like they are way more sophisticated than everyone else. And like, Maestro strikes me as that. If it's not that, let me know. But it struck me as that, so that kind of made it instantly kind of like off-putting to me. But again, I could be wrong, so let me know what you guys. If you've seen it and you think I'm wrong, let me know. But you gotta back it up with some like evidence or some shit. Be like, I also like these movies. Like you gotta make me trust your opinion. Of those three, I have the most interest in seeing Anatomy of a Fall. I'll definitely see that prior to the Oscars, and I'll see Zone of Interest if I don't have to like particularly go out of my way to do so. Otherwise, I've seen the other 7 nominees. I also haven't seen The Boy and the Heron or Napoleon. Napoleon didn't get a ton of nominations or anything like that, but I have great interest in it, and I will watch it once I have a good 3 hours of time to carve out. It's the same reason it took me a long time to watch Killers of the Flower Moon. It's hard for me to block off that much time for one thing all at one time. And I prefer to not start a movie and then finish it like the next day or something like that. The Boy and the Heron is another one that I have every intention of seeing prior to the Oscars. I just haven't yet. And that's it. So I feel like those 5 films or so are the only ones I need to give a disclaimer that I haven't seen. And if any one of those would appear in my top 10, I'm still comfortable doing the top 10 now without having seen them. I doubt very highly that any of them would impact the top 10 significantly, like crash into the top 5 or something like that. I'm also not going to spend a lot of time talking about each movie. I'll give general thoughts, but if I start getting into all the things that I liked and didn't like about each one, we'll be here for hours. None of us want that. So all right, let's get on with the top 10. And at number 10, we have May December, starring Julianne Moore and one of my longtime crushes, Natalie Portman, who I still think is fine as fuck. In this one, Natalie Portman plays Elizabeth, an actress who's meeting with Julianne Moore's character, Gracie, because she intends to play her in a movie. Why? Because Gracie went to prison for marrying an underage kid. But the relationship persisted, and Gracie is now out of prison and is married to the same kid, now an adult. And when Elizabeth comes to meet, interview, and study them for this role, we learn more about not just what their relationship was like then versus what it's like now, but even just how each party in the relationship, both the man and the woman, how they interpreted the other's actions. It really gets into not just present day, what their dynamic is like, which is weird enough in and of itself, versus what it is now with Elizabeth there studying them. It also kind of dives into some pretty deep-seated emotions that each of them might have regarding that situation, especially when you juxtapose that with their outward behavior. I think that this movie opens with them at kind of like a party, a party at their house, which is a very nice house. A get-together, you know, that kind of thing. Seeing how they behave outwardly versus how they really feel inside, that kind of stuff. In addition to being superbly acted by all 3 leads, this one takes some interesting swings. You know, I like to do the batter analogy with its score and cinematography that I found to be enjoyable. You guys know how much I like big creative swings. I've heard that there's a lot of people who disapprove of some of the choices, particularly with the score. It didn't bother me at all. Kind of surprised this one didn't get any acting nominations, but much love for the performances and what turned out to be a really compelling look at this couple's relationship. Number 9, I have Barbie. I'm not going to spend much time here, as I do have a video on the channel talking about it, which is linked below. But suffice to say that I really appreciated this creative way to shine a spotlight on patriarchy that was at times really funny, but also really moving. Bright, vibrant visuals, great cameos, even a dope soundtrack. Yo, I fuck with the soundtrack heavy. This one succeeded in virtually every way. Now, I'm gonna briefly address the elephant in the room. You know, but here's the thing. Here's the point that I'm gonna make that no one else is making. I don't agree with anybody getting acting nominations for this one. And that's not to say that anybody was bad or anything like that, but I didn't walk out of Barbie thinking about all the Oscar nominations that the actors were gonna get. So I'm not going to talk about how Ryan Gosling got one and Margot Robbie didn't get one, because I don't think anybody deserves a nomination. Additionally, America Ferrera, a brown woman, got one. So I feel like that's the end of the discussion as far as I'm concerned. Now, should Greta Gerwig have got a nomination? Absolutely. But even though there's very few movies I haven't seen 2 of the 5 films that have the Best Director nominee, or the director nominated for Best Director. So I can't say for sure that Greta should be ahead of either of them, but the other 3 definitely belong. It was like Christopher Nolan, I don't fucking know, man. The three that I've seen, I'm like, okay, those directors definitely deserve to be nominated. But then there's two that I haven't seen, so I can't say Gerwig should or should not be ahead of one of those two. Moving on, at number 8, I have Beau is Afraid, and admittedly, this one isn't for everybody. It's not an easy watch at all. The narrative goes on what feels like really long, like diversions. The movie itself is overly long, and the ending is probably going to be pretty unsatisfactory to virtually everybody. But the ways in which it's flawed are why it's only at number 8, though. Like, and again, I know it just sounded like I was kind of like dogging this shit out the movie because, but here's the thing, as you all know, I award big time bonus points for a film or a show taking big creative swings. There's my baseball analogy again, and swings don't get any fucking bigger than this one, man. Like, if you watch this and turn it off before you even get like 1 hour into it, and it's just like 3 hours long, I wouldn't blame you one bit at all. But man, I was sitting there like dying laughing at times, entranced by the imagery at other times, and just generally awestruck at what this movie was attempting to pull off. In short, it's about a guy with maximum fucking anxiety trying to get to his mom's funeral with the wildest anxiety-inducing shit happening to him on the way. I cannot stress the term wildest enough. But this isn't a film where you merely have to suspend disbelief. Like, suspension implies that it's temporary. Like, don't bring any measure of disbelief to this motherfucker, like, at all. Like, if you go into it open to it and just kind of sit back and let it wash over you and be willing to let a lot of shit go, it's a hell of an experience. I really enjoyed it. Even when there were times where I'm just like, I don't really like that thing, I still sat there and was like, but I kind of like that it went for it. And like, that's a level of movie going that's not gonna appeal to everyone. Like, most people be like, I just didn't like that shit. But like, I don't know. There's times where, and I wish I could state specifically, there's one where I was like, I don't really think that worked. But man, like, that was a really long trip to get to that place. I don't know if it really works, but I really appreciate that Ari Aster was willing to try that. So at number 7, I have American Fiction, which I actually think to be much better than the 7th best film, but everything ahead of it just did a better job of kind of like knocking my socks off in some way or another. It's only the awarding of bonus points for creativity that allows 6 other films to be ahead of American Fiction. If I didn't give so many additional kind of like mental bonus points for that kind of stuff, it would probably be higher. If you see the trailer for American Fiction, you've seen Jeffrey Wright playing Monk, a black writer whose books aren't selling until he starts writing some really base level shit to appeal to the lowest common denominator under a nom de plume. He writes like mythology or some shit. It was like a I don't know, like different takes on mythology or some shit, like shit that's very niche in general. But then he's like a black writer and he's like mad that his shit's like in the black section instead of in the mythology section, like shit like that, right? The trailer paints it as a comedy, and again, it is a very funny movie. Don't get me wrong, but I think the irony here is that it uses a fairly basic means of that being comedy to appeal to potential viewers, to get more asses in the seats. But once you get in the theater, I think like you still get a comedy, but you're met with a film that I think is more of a moving story about this man and his family than it is about getting laughs. The fact that it's also funny is what really propels it up the list. But everyone's great in this. Jeffrey Wright, Tracee Ellis Ross, Sterling K. Brown, Erica Alexander, playing a lawyer again for the first time, at least for me, since Maxine Shaw in Living Single. Of course, only the 2 men got Oscar nominations, much to Greta Gerwig's chagrin. But this film works on so many levels. It's funny, it's moving, it has a lot to say about family, race, the idea of exploiting your own people for personal recognition or financial success. It's just really great all around. And like I said, the only reason it's not higher is due to the bonus points that I award for big creative scenes or just doing shit that I haven't seen before. Which I think is a great segue into the number 6 film, which is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Again, not spending a ton of time here. We're talking about an animated Spider-Man film after all, but if you're writing this one off because it's animated, you're making a big mistake. Somehow surpassing the also superb Into the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse succeeds in every way the original film did and surpasses it in some ways as well. I don't think I need to speak to the visuals. I think you all already know about that. But if you don't know, ain't no shit out here like this. Visuals are next level, crazy, dope, outstanding. The soundtrack is one of the best albums of 2023, and that's no hyperbole. Like that, the soundtrack is fucking awesome. The movie is just really fucking cool. I told my son, he's 15. I'm like, I'm envious of the fact that this is your Spider-Man. Like, you got a really cool Spider-Man, dude. The characters are great. It's phenomenally voice acted. The story is exciting and creative. Plot twist, all that good shit. This one's great across the board. Set the stage for a great third film in this trilogy to surpass even these first two. Just at the end of the day, though, it's a little bit hard for me to put an animated Spider-Man film in my top 5 because no matter how great it is, it's limited by being an animated Spider-Man movie. Like, I just can't, like, I'm gonna put that up against fucking the shit that's at number 1 and number 2 on my list. Like, I'm gonna be like, yeah, this is Spider-Man just as good as these. And I feel like, sidebar, I feel like it's disingenuous to act like it is. Like, I think like if you think it makes you like a more sophisticated film goer to like put in a fucking monocle and be like, here's all the reasons why you're underrating this animated Spider-Man film and why it's just as good as insert live action movie that's actually really, really great. And like, I placed it number 6. I have no problem, saying this is a great movie. Like that's what it is. But I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like it's in the same vein as the movies that I have at number 1 and number 2. Like, it's just not. And I think it's disingenuous and a little fake to act like it is. Like, I don't agree that the animated Spider-Mans are better than, not specifically the 2 Spider-Verse movies are better than say the live action Tom Holland or the Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire. There's something to bring that human performances bring, that animated performances, it is impossible to match, and you're lying if you say that it does. And at the end of the day, I feel like that limits these animated films from being really, really like, oh, this animated film is just as good as this live action one. I stopped short of that. Maybe I'll change that one day, but again, love this movie. It's great. It's great. And even if you're scoffing at me putting an animated Spider-Man movie at number 6, listen to what I just said about how I rank animated Spider-Man movies and think like, wow, that one must be really good because despite what he just said, he still put it at number 6. So, yeah, take that for what it is. At number 5, I have, I think, a pretty controversial pick. It might still be high because it's still kind of recent for me, although a lot of this stuff's recent for me. But it's Leave the World Behind by Sam Esmail on Netflix. A lot of people didn't like this one, and again, I get it. This film's about a world in which a cyber attack has essentially crippled the country, and at the same time that this happens, a family that's staying in like an Airbnb or whatever has this father-daughter couple show up in the middle of the night like, yo, I need to stay up in here. And I think going in, I thought that this was going to be like a suspense horror film about what the terrors that this father-daughter pair were going to inflict on these people staying in this Airbnb. But it's mainly a film about how quickly society will crumble if this actually happened in real life, which if you watch the news, like it feels pretty feasible, which of course adds to the level of fright, right? And that's where a lot of the suspense derives from. It's kind of like the same as season 1 of The Handmaid's Tale. It's the one that felt like that shit felt like this, like are we close to this happening? Like, and that added to the suspense. And this feels incredibly plausible, so that adds to the kind of like the suspense here. Sam Esmail directed this. He's the mind behind one of my all-time favorite shows, Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot was layered as fuck, and this isn't, but it had enough going on to keep me really engaged. What's gonna really, I think, make or break this movie for most people, for you, viewer, if you haven't seen it, is the ending. Virtually everyone I've seen talk about the ending hates it. I liked it. That may be the sole thing that determines how you feel about this movie. I'll tell you right now, the ending is fairly ambiguous. I don't think it's as ambiguous as others make it out to be, but I thought it really worked. I don't always need a definitive ending, though. I just need a satisfactory one, and that's possible without a definitive one, and that's what we got here. Like, I felt like I was given enough information to understand what the filmmaker was trying to do by ending it at that point. And that's really all I need out of it. At number 4, I have The Killer, which is the latest David Fincher film on Netflix. It's not Fincher's best film, which you're probably like, why the fuck's it at number 4? It's because Fincher's that fucking good. Like, it doesn't say it doesn't say much that it's not Fincher's best film, because the bar for David Fincher is so fucking high that it can be not Fincher's best film, but still be one of the best films that I saw this year. It's a simple movie. Fassbender plays a killer, and I don't believe he's ever actually given a name, who has a job go wrong and then finds himself being hunted because of it. Of course, he then goes on the offensive. But when I say it's simple, I don't even mean merely that the premise is simple. It's a simple film. Like, we learn, we carefully and quietly follow this killer through his day-to-day life, how he prepares for a kill, how he, no pun intended, kills time while he's surveilling. It's all very precise, very methodical. His approach, the killer, and both Sam Esmail's approach to making the film. I found all of this to not only be interesting, but to border on frightening. It's very cold, it's very calculating, very matter of fact, traits we find common in Fincher's work. There's a measure of emotionlessness to Fassbender's performance that is just flat out creepy. And I really enjoyed that about this movie. It's a simple and straightforward suspense film that just does everything well and draws you in and keeps you there. And number 3 is Saltburn, another movie which places higher on my list just due to the sheer fucking audacity of it. Barry Keoghan, I hope I'm saying his name right. I've never actually looked up how to say it, but looking at the spelling, I feel confident that Keoghan is Keoghan, like kind of like with a Y, like Keoghan is probably kind of close, but hey, whatever. You guys know who I'm talking about. He plays a guy who's having trouble fitting in at Oxford and becomes enamored with one of the popular students there, played by Jacob Elordi. Playing a likable character as opposed to what he plays on Euphoria. And Barry Keoghan's character becomes completely obsessed and goes full Barry Keoghan. And that's it. Like, that's the movie. Like, he just goes full Barry. And it's worth seeing on that alone, but it's also tough to recommend because you kind of gotta be a hardcore film goer to fuck with this. Like it's kind of like Beau is Afraid in that, and it's like another film I'm gonna speak of in a moment. It isn't an easy watch. Like, it could get pretty far out there, and there's some stuff here that I assume will be off-putting or jarring to a lot of viewers. I personally feel like I've seen so much stuff that my bar for what's jarring or shocking is pretty fucking high, but. So I found this stuff to be moderately jarring, but like a lot of people might be like, "Yo, what the fuck?" So it's a tepid recommend for me because there's a ton here to like from the performances, from the whole cast, the visuals, how it's shot, the humor, the Barry Keoghan-ness of it all. It was a really fun time for me. And the reason I put this higher than Beau is Afraid is that this doesn't have like the lulls that Beau has, and it has an ending that's. I can't believe I'm saying this given how it ends. It has an ending that's a bit easier to digest than the ending. Like, no one's going to find that funny unless you've seen the end of both movies, but it has an ending that's a little bit easier to digest than the ending of Beau is Afraid. And, you know, Beau is Afraid, like a lot of these movies in my top 10 that bar them from getting and I'm going to explain how I rate movies a little bit later, but what holds a lot of these movies back from being a 4.5 rating on my personal scale or a 5 rating is that they're too bloated. They spend too much time providing example after example after example of whatever concept it is that they want us to understand. And Beau is Afraid didn't do this, but Beau is Afraid, it dragged, I think, a little bit unnecessarily, almost to the point of like me wondering, like, are you fucking with me? and that kind of Saltburn is tight. Like, it doesn't really have that. So that's what made it higher. At the same time, though, I think the highs on Beau is Afraid are higher than the highs are on Saltburn. But this one is just consistently entertaining, whereas Beau can kind of drag at times. Number 2 is Poor Things, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos and starring Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo. This is another one that, again, just due to the sheer audacity of this film, it gets a ton of points from me. The difference here between this and Saltburn and Beau is Afraid is that this isn't merely a good movie with flaws that I'm overlooking because I'm so impressed by the big swings of the creativity. There ain't many flaws with this one. As a matter of fact, I can only think of one flaw, and it's pretty subjective. Like, so there's many ways I could spoil this movie for you. This is not going to be one of them, so don't feel like you need to skip ahead. There's a sexual component to this film, and I think that aspect of it was drawn out more than it needed to be. And you guys know how I say, like, I don't need example after example of something to get the point of what you're trying to tell me. I feel like I understood the point of the sex scenes long before they stopped happening. And even though sex is my jam, I got 4 kids. If I'm critiquing a film or a show, I'm going to treat sex like I'm going to treat everything else. And I did reach a point where I was like, I get how she is. I don't need to see her fucking again. Like, I get it. And just, that's a very minor subjective quibble that I had. And otherwise, this thing is spectacular in every way. Wildly creative, visually vibrant and stunning. An all-time great performance, in my opinion, from Emma Stone, who, again, in my opinion, as all of this is, should be a shoo-in for the Oscar. And has had one hell of a 2023. I just don't see... No, I'm not even gonna go there. Great performances across the board from the entire cast here. The costumes are insane. The score, it's all great, and it's nominated for like Oscars in like all of these categories, rightfully so. But here's the thing, and I've been saying this a lot, and this is why, for some people, you guys might look at it like this wasn't a great year, and I might look at it as like there's a lot of good stuff that came out this year. But here's the thing about this one, not for everyone. Just like a lot of the stuff that's in my top 10, this thing's way out there, man. Like, this is one of those movies that you're either gonna turn this shit off right away and go, fuck this, or you're gonna watch the whole thing and go, give me some more of what that guy does. And I fall into the latter category. I never saw The Favorite. It was a heavily Oscar-nominated film from, I want to say 2018. Olivia Colman won an Oscar for it. I think that was the only Oscar that it won, but it was nominated in a bunch of categories. But I never saw it, but best believe it shot up to the top of my to-watch list after I saw Poor Things, which I love this movie. I really did. I can't even tell you guys what this movie is about because learning what it's about is part of the experience. I'll just close by saying this. If you're willing to watch a movie that's, let's say, very non-traditional, there's a ton to like here, and you're probably going to love it. You just got to be open to it, though. And if you are, this was a banger, man. This year for movies felt like a ton of stuff that was really good, but virtually nothing was great. Yeah, as a matter of fact, let me do... This is a good time, I think, for me to actually talk about how I rate films. So let me do a little bit of sidebar right here. If a movie is like an all-time great movie to me, I'll give it a 5. So nothing gets a 5 from me, hardly ever. Like, that is a stance that I have across how I rate film and television. If I give it a 5, it's one of the best things I've ever seen, so virtually nothing gets a 5. 4.5 is like the highest I'm willing to go with virtually everything that I've ever seen. If something is so bad that I turn it off without finishing it, then I'll give it a 1. Same thing applies on the opposite end. Virtually nothing gets a 1. Otherwise, most stuff that's good falls around a 4 rating, and most stuff that's bad falls around a 2. I'll give a 4.5 for something that's great, but not flawless. I only gave 2 4.5s this year to this, Poor Things, and to my number 1, which if you're still here, you've probably already guessed is Oppenheimer. Again, not going to delve too deeply into this one. I have a video here on the channel for Oppenheimer, which I've linked below. But just like a wildly creative movie is my jam, a Christopher Nolan flick is also my jam. Nolan makes films for film people, dude. Like, when he goes out, when he goes all out, everything is great. and this film's no exception. Like, I hate only highlighting individual performances amongst this cast because they were all stellar across the board. But man, Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. were absolutely amazing here. All the things you come to expect from a Nolan film are top notch, including the sound, which is something that his films always excel at. It's Oscar nominated there, as I feel like all of his movies always are, as well as the score, to no one's surprise. Hans Zimmer always notching the Oscar nominations. Cinematography, costume design, production design, editing, like all of these things are noticeably great in Nolan films, and this is no exception. Like you could not ever notice the costume design in something, and you'll watch a Nolan and be like, "That's really good. That's really good." You hear the sound, like, "That's really good." You look at the lighting or the set, you're like, "Man, that shit." Like, you'll notice things that you don't normally notice. That's how high level Nolan works at. And this is my favorite film, the best film of the year to me. But let me hear yours in the comments, and check out the link, the link that's below, to get my more extended thoughts on both this and Barbie from earlier. And lastly, before I talk about some of the notable absences, I want to tell you all a couple of news-related things. I'll be on the Daily DVR podcast again. Those of you who've been around a while might recall that I was on that podcast. I'm on it a lot, but I was on the podcast last year, many other times as well, talk about my favorite shows of 2022. I'll be doing that again this Saturday, talking about my favorite shows of 2023. I'll be on there with several other people as well. There may be a live link to view that while we record it. We did that last year. I don't know if it's happening again this year. I would guess that it probably is. That can allow you to enter the chat and submit questions, leave comments and whatnot. If that does happen, I will drop that news and that link on the One Mic Facebook page and on the Discord, both of which are linked in every video description. Now, I want to close by talking about some noticeable films that you may have heard of or enjoyed that didn't appear in my top 10 that I also did not say is something that I haven't seen. So let's talk about that real quick, because I don't shy away from shit. The Holdovers didn't land for me. It was fine. Nice little enjoyable story about a kid stuck at a prep school over the summer with this curmudgeon of a teacher that everyone hates. I just didn't think it was special in any kind of way. It was, like, again, it was fine. I didn't dislike it. It's an easily digestible film that I'm sure is going to be a quaint, warm, and fuzzy little film in everyone's hearts for a long time. It just did nothing special for me to warrant any placement anywhere. I don't have a desire to see it again, nor would I really recommend it to anyone unless they are looking for that specific thing. Like, I'm looking for something Christmassy that's heartwarming. It's gonna make me want to hug my teddy bear. All right, I got one for you. Otherwise, I've already established 10 films I recommend ahead of this one, and this ain't 11th either. But here's one that actually literally was 11th, Past Lives. American Fiction. Once I saw American Fiction, I think it was like last week, it pushed Past Lives out of the top 10. Nothing to sneeze at. However, Past Lives sees a much more positive reception amongst other people than I think it did with me, being at number 10 and then eventually getting pushed out to number 11. Again, it was fine. It was a nice story about two people who are really close friends as kids. They get separated as life tends to do, and they live their respective lives, going on separate paths, and they reconnect as adults, and they have to grapple with unaddressed feelings, and then the fact that one of them is now married. There are three main performances here. All of them, in my opinion, were great. The leads, Greta Lee and Teo Yoo, were both outstanding, and both, in my opinion, should have gotten Oscar nominations. All the attention has been thrown toward Greta Lee in the time since the film was released, but I thought Teo Yoo was equally great. Greta Lee's character, Nora, like I said, one of them gets married. She's the one that got married in the time when the two were separated. And she marries a guy named Arthur. He's a white guy played by... I'm specifying that he's a white guy because they're... I think it was kind of like, why is he a white guy? The two leads are, I think, Korean. But so she marries a white guy. He's played by John Magaro. He doesn't get a ton of screen time, but when he does, he's great as well. This is just one where I think these characters and their past stories resonated a lot more with others than it did with me. I saw this at the top or near the top of most best of 2023 lists, and while it was in mine all the way up until January 2024, it was never at or near the top. So this is one that I enjoyed. I do recommend. I thought it was quite good. I just don't think it was. I don't know. It's nothing that made me go holy shit. And you need to reach a kind of a special kind of like holy shit to crack the top 10. And it just didn't do that for me. And then the final glaring absence that I want to talk about, and if you're still here, you have again probably already guessed what this movie is. Killers of the Flower Moon. What? Like, how the fuck did the new Scorsese with Leo, with De Niro, and Lily Gladstone, she just won the Golden Globe. How the fuck did that not make your top 10? Well, I have a really simple answer for that. In a time where we're finally starting to get all of these great indigenous stories told by indigenous actors like on Dark Winds or on 1923 or Reservation Dogs, Scorsese, it feels like he seemed to just want to take advantage of how these projects are becoming popular and well received, but then still went out and made a movie about white people. And like that, if I'm being honest, that pissed me off. Like, in a technical sense, it's Scorsese. It's great in every way. We don't even need to talk about that. Like, whatever way you're thinking, like, but this was great. Yes, it was. I'm not going to argue with you on any point. And it's an important story to tell. So, like, I don't have anything to say ill about the technical aspects of this movie, the acting in it, any of it, none of that, really. It's just, it felt like an overcorrection. Like, since Hollywood and white America as a whole has been fine with pretending like they didn't do what they did to the Native Americans and all these atrocities that they inflicted on these people, that they didn't exist. It feels like since that's how we've behaved and treated these people in this time, that Scorsese felt the need to like virtue signal by making a movie with the message of like, look at how bad these white people were to these Native Americans. Shame on them. The problem is that this movie is about Leonardo DiCaprio's character and Robert De Niro's character, not about the Native American characters. They're just the tool used to teach Leo's character a lesson. And prior to this time period, that probably would have been okay if not entirely missed or overlooked by me. But it almost feels tone deaf to live in a world where great content is being made about and by these people, and you put out some shit that's about white people. And this is a guy. I feel like I'm going hard on Martin Scorsese right now, and I'm just like, what planet am I on where I am going hard on Martin Scorsese? But like, this is a guy that doesn't miss a single opportunity to shit on Marvel, and I get why he does that, considering what the kind of movies that he makes. Like, and the legend that he is. But you know what Marvel's doing? Look at Miss Marvel. Look at Echo. Like, Marvel is telling stories about all different types of cultures and casting those people to tell it. Meanwhile, the guy who shits on Marvel twice before breakfast tries to make a movie about Native Americans and makes the 700,000th movie about white people mistreating minorities and eventually learning a lesson. And then he took 3.5 hours to do it. Like, so it's like, pat yourself on the back, Marty, you nailed it. But like, I don't know, man. Like, I didn't need that shit, man. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I just felt like this was a really, it was a noble undertaking that missed the mark to me in its intention and what it was attempting to deliver. It just, like, okay, again, when we're talking about and I didn't plan on going this long, when we're talking about how I get tired of example after example after example of something, this movie was like the fucking king of that shit. It's like 3.5 hours long, and the 2 hours in the middle is example after example of white man either of white man killing Native American wife or setting her up to be killed, and getting increasingly more flagrant with it during the 2-hour time span where they just repeat the same process over and over. And that was another where I'm like, okay, this didn't need to be 3.5 hours. You could have cut the examples of what the white people were doing to the natives in half and given me a much tighter and much better movie. And again, maybe it would feel less about Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro and maybe more about the Native Americans if maybe you told it from the perspective of the Native Americans and this being done to them, as opposed to it's from the perspective of the white people and what they're doing to other people. And like, I don't know, man. It didn't work for me, and it felt very disingenuous to make that movie at that time and then have it essentially be from the perspective of the white people. And then, like I said, coupled with the fact that this guy shits on Marvel twice before breakfast, but then Marvel is, at least, at the very least, if you think Miss Marvel, the Disney show, is a piece of shit, and you think the Marvels, the movie, was a piece of shit, at least Marvel is giving, I'm sorry, I don't know her name, but the actress that plays her, at least that actress is getting a shot to tell their stories in their way and to introduce people to their culture. And this just kind of felt like, let's just get these native actors. We'll give Lily Gladstone some time, but like, most of these motherfuckers ain't even gonna get to talk. Let's get some native actors in here, and we'll kill them off, and it tells the story. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm not gonna keep going, but that's it. So that's my best of 2023 in film video. Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you're not a patron, become one. I'm about to start a video series of, I mapped it out, I think it's gonna be like 4 videos covering my favorite shows of all time and reading patron submissions. So if you want to submit your own list and you want to see that, well, that video I'm gonna put on the main channel, but if you want to submit your own list, you're gonna want to be a patron to do that. I also might do a video talking about my year in music as well, but it was an eventful one for me, but I'm still not a big music guy, so we'll see. That'll probably end up on the Patreon if I do it. But like I said, let me know what you thought in the comments. Check for me on Daily DVR this week, and until then, peace.